Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All words Sri Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Himanshu Prabhu, when you're ready, you can start, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Let me invoke the prayer. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tote Adudire Nashtaprayasha Patreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistike. Today we are gonna read from Canto 3, Chapter 5, from text 26 to text 38. Text 26. The Supreme Living Being, in his feature as the Transcendental Purusha incarnation, who is the Lord's plenary expansion, impregnates the material nature of three modes, and thus, by influence of eternal time, the living entities appear. Text 27. Thereafter, influenced by the intrication, intri, intrications of eternal time, the supreme sum total of matter called the Mahatattva became manifested, and in this Mahatattva, the unalloyed goodness, the Supreme Lord, sowed the seed of universal manifestation out of his own body. Text 28. Thereafter, the Mahatattva differentiates itself into many different forms as the reservoir of the would be entities. The Mahatattva is the chiefly in the mode of ignorance, and it generates the false ego. It is a plenary expansion of the personality of Godhead with full consciousness of creative principle and the times for fruitification. Text 29. Mahatattva, or the great causal truth, transforms into false ego, which is manifested in three phases: cause, effects, and the doer. All such activities are on the mental plane and are based on the material elements, gross senses, and mental speculation. The false ego is represented in three different modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Text 30. The false ego is transformed into mind by interaction with the mode of goodness. All the demigods who control the phenomenal world are also product of the same principle, namely the integrations of false ego and the mode of goodness. The text 31. The senses are certainly products of mode of passion in false ego, and therefore philosophical speculation, knowledge, and fruitive activities are predominantly products of the mode of passion. The text 32. The sky is the product of the sound, and sound is the transformation of egoistic ignorance. In the other word, the sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul. Text 33. Thereafter, the personality of the Godhead glance over the sky, partly mixed with eternal time and external energy, and thus develop the touch sensation from which the air in the sky are produced. Text 34. Thereafter, the extremely powerful air interacting with the sky generated a form of sense perception, and the perception of form transform into electricity, the light to see the world. Text 35. When electricity was surcharged in the air and was glanced over by the Supreme at that time, by the mixture of eternal time and external energy, three, there occurred the creation of water and taste. Text 36. Thereafter, the water produced from the electricity was glanced over by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and mixed with eternal time and external energy. Thus, it was transformed into the earth, which is qualified preliminary by smell. Text 37. O gentle one, of all the physical element, beginning from the sky down to the earth, all the inferior and superior qualities are due only to final touch of the glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 38. The controlling deities of all the above mentioned physical elements are empowered expansions of Lord Vishnu. They are embodied by eternal time under the external energy, and they are his part and parcel because they were entrusted with different functions of universal duties and were unable to perform them. They offered fascinating prayers to the Lord as follows. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Himanshu Prabhuji. Krishna Prabhu, you can start whenever you're ready, Prabhu.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Manch Prabhu, for reading the translations. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, chapter 5, titled Vidura Talks with Maitreya. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnanjanasalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pachatta Deshatarani. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktarunda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you all for joining in today's session. Just to give a background, in the previous chapter, Uddhava narrated the annihilation of Hedu dynasty, and then he also mentioned about how Krishna sat under a banana tree, and at that time Uddhava and Maitreya Muni met Supreme Lord Krishna, and Krishna enlightened them with Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Lord told to Uddhava to go to Badrika Ashram and be in the association of the devotees of Naranarayana, also share this Srimad Bhagavatam knowledge to them. Then Vidura requested Uddhava to enlighten with that Srimad Bhagavatam knowledge that he heard from Supreme Lord. But out of humbleness, Uddhava requested Maitreya Muni, Uddhava requested Vidura to approach Maitreya Muni and hear from him. So in this chapter, we hear that upon the suggestion of the Uddhava, Vidura approached Maitreya Muni, and he humbly requested Maitreya Muni to enlighten him with Srimad Bhagavatam knowledge. And Maitreya Muni, here we see that he started narrating this Srimad Bhagavatam knowledge to Vidura, which he heard from the Supreme Lord. So he's starting with how this material creation has been created, that started through the Lord's incarnation as Purusha or Guna Avataras, and how the demigods, after they were created, pray to the Supreme Lord, so which will be continued tomorrow's, to guide them in serving him by performing their prescribed duties of managing this universe. So today we are reading from the slokas 26 to 38. So before that, in this chapter, we see how Uddhava, upon the suggestion of Uddhava, so Vidura traveled and reached Haridwar, then met Maitreya Muni, and then requested Maitreya Muni to share this knowledge. And now we see that Maitreya Muni is narrating the Srimad Bhagavatam knowledge to Vidura, starting from how this creation has been performed by the Supreme Lord through his incarnation. So in the previous slokas 22, we see that here. So Maitreya Muni is telling that he will describe how the Supreme Lord, through his transcendental potency, he will create, maintain, and distribute this cosmic world. So that narration is going on. And in the previous sloka also we see that this material world is run by the external energy known as Maya or illusion. So in the text 26, today's the first sloka, Maitreya Muni is narrating that the Krishna in his transcendental Purusha incarnation, sorry, so this is not going. Okay. Transcendental Purusha incarnation. So he impregnates the material nature of the three modes. And by the influence of time, then the living entities creates. So we see in this sloka, Krishna, through his Purusha incarnation, Karunodaksai Vishnu, so he impregnates this material nature of the three modes. So the three modes are Sattva, Rajo, Tamo Gunas, mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. Of course, Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita about these three modes also. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport, so how like we in this world also we see how a father impregnates the mother with the semen. So then the living entity who is residing in the semen of the father will be placed in the womb of the mother. So similarly, Krishna also impregnates mother nature. Then the living entities starts appearing in this material world. So otherwise, Prabhupada mentions that the mother nature by herself cannot produce the living entities. Of course, the impregnant process is different, what we see in this material world. Like in this material world, a father impregnates through semen, but here, the Krishna in his Purusha incarnation, he impregnates the material nature just by glance. So not through the process that we see in this material world, like a sexual process, not like that. And Prabhupada mentions that since we are coming from Krishna and we are not created by Mother Nature, hence we are very uncomfortable in this material world because we doesn't belong to this material world. So our real home is the spiritual world. So that's why we are not comfortable. So when we go back to the spiritual world, then we will be comfortable. So that's where we can be happy. Until then, as long as we are in this material world, we are not happy. So in the text 27, Krishna is saying that the Maitreya Muni is mentioning that with the influence of the interaction of the eternal time, the supreme sum total of matter called Mahatattva, so it becomes manifested. And we see that Mahatattva is the unalloyed goodness. So that's how the creation starts. Like Prabhupada mentions in the purport that in the due course of time, so the impregnated material energy is manifested as the sum total of matter, the total material ingredients. So that's why we say that, that time is very powerful. So in due course of time, everything will happen in this material world. Like we see in this world, people come together in due course of time, and the same people will be separated in due course of time. So that's why Chanakya Pandita says that even a moment of time that has been gone, so we cannot bring back even with paying millions of gold coins. So that's why Chanakya Pandita stresses that so the each and every moment of time should be utilized this very properly. So which will be helpful for us. And Bhagavatam says that with each and every sunrise and sunset, we are closer to death for one day. But whoever uses this time, the sunrise and sunset, whatever the time, duration of time, in Krishna consciousness, they will be closer to Krishna. So that's why their time will not be wasted. So Uttama Sloka Vartaya, like that. And then Prabhupada also mentions that this Mahatattva is unalloyed goodness. So in this Mahatattva, the unalloyed goodness. So when this when it's time for creation, the Mahatattva, which is in pure goodness, so is added with a slight mode of passion. Then the activity is generated from that point. So that's how the creation begins. So when it is added with a slight passion, that's where the creation starts. So in the text 28, so we see that the Mahatattva differentiates itself into many different forms as the reservoir of would-be entities. And the Mahatattva is chiefly in the mode of ignorance. So that it generates the false ego. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that the living entities are pure and they are pure and they are part and parcel of Krishna. So this material creation is for the living entities who are rebellious of or envious of Krishna, or who wants to lord over on the material nature, or who wants to imitate Krishna, who wants to imitate as a master, because in the spiritual world Krishna is the center, and the living entities envious of Krishna, they wanted to imitate Krishna, and Krishna created this material world for those kind of living entities. So that is called as false ego. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that under the pressure of false ego, the conditioned souls, although they are part and parcel of Supreme Lord, so they want to be the enjoyer. So they claim to be the enjoyers of the material nature. So for that, Krishna is created this Mahatattva. So this Mahatattva is the medium between the pure spirit and the material existence. So this is the junction of matter and spirit, where from this Mahatattva, the false ego is generated. So this false ego is the binding force of the material existence. So that's what Prabhupada mentions. So we all came from the spiritual world to the material worlds to enjoy or to lord over, to be happiness, more happiness. But this world is unfortunately designed to have the suffering. So dukkha. So that's why Prabhupada mentions that Krishna is very merciful. So he is again giving chance for all of us to get free from this false ego. So that's why this material creation is taking place. So he is giving all the conditioned souls, all facilities to rectify our false ego. So in the text 29, Maitreya Muni is mentioning that so Mahatattva transforms into false ego. It's manifested into 3 phases: cause, effect, and doer. So all such activities are the mental plane and are based on the material elements or gross senses. And this false ego is represented in 3 modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that so this false ego is manifested in different modes. Right? Here, goodness, passion, and ignorance, 3 modes. So those who are in the mode of goodness, so by the influence of this false ego, they think that everyone is the Supreme Lord. So everyone is God. And those who are in the mode of passion, so they want, because they are puffed up by their pride, they want to lord over on this material nature. So that's why they engage in so many different types of activities. But those who are in the mode of ignorance, so all their activities are centered on the bodily platform. So any activities that they are doing, so they're all bodily related activities, and they identify themselves as the gross body, so not the pure spirit soul. And this entire material creation, Prabhupada mentions that, is meant for the falsely egoistic living entities. So whoever in this material world, they have different grades of false ego. So for them, this material creation is created by Supreme Lord Krishna. And then in the text 30th, this false ego, it is transformed into mind by the interaction with the mode of goodness. And from there, all the demigods who control this world, they are also products of the same principle. So this is false ego in the mode of goodness. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that so the false ego, when it is interacted with the different modes of the material nature, that is the source of all the material world, the phenomenal world. And we see here the mind is the false ego interaction with the mode of goodness. So the mind is actually product of mode of goodness. So it has the capability to help us in going back home, back to Goddess. So if we train the mind in a properly, then it will help us to take us back to the Supreme Lord, or to take us back to the spiritual world. So Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, right? Bandhura Atma Manastasya, like that. You know, when the mind is trained properly, so when we conquer the mind, then it is a best friend. So if it is not controlled, then it is the worst enemy. So that's why we always needs to train our mind in such a way that so it will help us to go back home, back to Godhead. So, and in the other point, Prabhupada mentions that these demigods who are controlling, like who helps Krishna in managing this universal affairs, they are also product of, they are also in the mode of goodness. So that's why they have a greater percentage of good qualities compared to the other sect of people, like any other people. So that's why they serve Krishna in a greater capacity. So they are the devotees of the Supreme Lord, and they are serving Krishna in a greater capacity. And even though they have some material desires, but they are very, very far better than a person like me, the person who is in this material world. So, and Bhagavatam says that so when somebody is taking up Krishna consciousness and progressing nicely, so for them all these godly qualities, so the demigods godly qualities, they will appear, like sarvair gunais tatra samasate suraha. Like when one takes up Krishna consciousness, so their godly qualities will be increased. And we see the demigods already has these good qualities. So that's why they should be respectable. We should respect them very nicely, because they are the great devotees of the Supreme Lord, and they are serving Krishna in greater capacity, and they are in the mode of goodness. So Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita the different modes and their characteristics in a detailed manner. So in the text 31, we see that the senses, they are the products of mode of passion in false ego. So that's why the senses are very, very strong. So they are in the mode of passion. So when the senses are not properly controlled, so then they will create an havoc, like they will pull us into this material activities. So we see that many examples how the senses will destroy a living entity. Like suppose for the tongue, if the tongue is not controlled, so they'll give an example of fish, right? So if the fisherman, how he catches, so he'll put a hook and he will add a nice bite, and then the fish unable to control the tongue, so it will come and it will catch that, it will try to eat the bite, and then the fisherman takes that fish out of the water and the fish will be died. So if the senses are not controlled, then it will destroy the living entity, or it will put the living entity into the problems. And then Maitreya Muni narrates how the 5 elements of this material manifestation is created. So the first, it started with the sky is a product of sound. So this material elements starts from the subtle elements, and then it will come with gross elements. Like the sound is the subtle element, and the sky is the gross element. So from the sound, the sky is generated. So that's why Prabhupada mentions in the purport that the entire material manifestation, it began from the sound. So from the sound, the sky started. So that's why this sound has the ability to put us in the material entanglement, and it has the same sound has the ability to take us back to the home, to the spiritual world. So if we use this sound in the material topics, talking about the material topics, then it will bind us in this material world. But if the same sound, if we use it in chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, so then that same sound will help us to take us back home, back to Godhead. So that's why we see, like, in the case of Ambarish Maharaj, so he always uses this sound or this mouth, whatever the talks, that the sound that comes from his mouth, he always uses that sound in the Krishna consciousness or in the spiritual sound, like Vacham Sivaikuntha Gunan Varnane, like that. So that's why here it is stressed that so if we can engage this sound to discuss about the topics of Krishna or related, so then we'll be purified and we can go back home, back to Godhead. And then in the text 33, we see that when Supreme Lord glanced over the sky and partly mixed with eternal time, so then the next product came is the touch sensation. This is the subtle element, the touch sensation. And from that, air came. So air in the sky was produced. So this is the next element that is created. So we see that the subtle element is touch sensation and the gross element is air. So air has the, so when air is passed, we can feel the touch sensation. And another thing is, whatever the products are produced from the sky, the air was produced. So the sky has the the subtle form of the sky is sound. So similarly, air has the quality of the sound and also touch sensation. So the next element that was created carries the subtle qualities of the previous element also. So the air has the touch of sensation and it also has the subtle quality of the sky, which is sound. So both of them. So that's why we see sometimes the air is blowing very heavily, then we can hear the sound also. And when the air is passing through us, and we can also feel the touch sensation. So similarly, how the sound should be used in the Krishna consciousness. Similarly, if we can use this touch sensation in the Krishna consciousness, then it will be perfectly utilized, like touching the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord or his devotees. So that's how this touch sensation should be used. So otherwise, if we use it for different things, then it will destroy us. Like how a elephant catcher. So someone wants to catch the elephant. So what they do, the male elephant. So what they do is they will send the female elephant close to the male elephant, and this female elephant goes and then it will touch the male elephant. So due to that touch, and the male elephant gets attracted to the female elephant, and it runs behind the female elephant. And at some point, the person who wants to catch this male elephant, he prepares a big hole. So where this male elephant falls down there. So, and from there, it becomes a slave of that person, or it is controlled by that person. So if the touch sensation is not used properly, or if the touch sensation is not used in Krishna consciousness, that will create havoc, or that will destroy, or that will put a person in the problem. So then the next element that was created is the air. From the air interacting with the sky, generated the sense perception, and it is transformed into electricity, the light to see the world. Sorry. Okay. And then in text 35, this electricity was surged in the air and was glanced over by the Supreme. At that time, by a mixture of eternal time and external energy, so the water was created. So here, the above sloka, the fire was created, and here in the 35 sloka, the water is created. So when the fire is created, it has a form. So it has a perception of form. And the water is created, it has the perception of the taste. So both the electricity, the fire has the form. Not only the fire has the form, it also has the touch sensation, and it also has the sound. So similarly, the air carries all the subtle qualities of the previous elements. So the water, it carries the previous elements subtle qualities. So water not only have the taste, but it also will have the form and touch sensation, and then also the sound. So similarly, how the other subtle qualities should be used, similarly the taste also should be used, engaged in Krishna consciousness, like to taste Krishna prasadam. So not to eat anything and everything, that will cause problem. So and then so in the text 36, I think this is the last sloka for today. Oh sorry, up to 38. Okay. So the electricity was glanced over by the Supreme Person of Godhead, mixed with eternal time and energy. It was transformed into earth. So the next element was created, earth, and the subtle quality of the earth is smell. So the smell. So similarly, the smell also should be used for smelling the flowers that are offered to Krishna, like that. So in that way, so we can spiritualize all the subtle qualities that we have, and we can spiritualize all the senses that we have. So by that way, we can go back home, back to Godhead. We can be purified. And then in the text 37, Maitreya Muni is telling that all these physical elements, beginning from the sky down to earth, whether it is inferior or superior qualities, so they will create magic only with the touch or the glance of the Supreme Lord. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that even though these physical elements may work very wonderfully, but their working is actually take place under the Supreme Lord's touch or the glance. So they are all under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. And then the text 38, so the last sloka for today. The controlled deities of all the above mentioned physical elements, they are empowered expansions of Lord Vishnu. And they are embedded by eternal time under the external energy. And they are the Krishna's part and parcels. So, and they are all entrusted with the different functions of the universal duties. And that's how they were unable to perform those services. So, and Maitreya Muni is mentioning that how all these demigods who are in charge of different affairs of this universal management, so they are all empowered expansions of Lord Vishnu. So we also see in this material world, am I right? How like if a government needs to perform, what does the president do is, so he will select a few candidates and he will make them as in charge to a different departments like finance department or police department or fire department, water department, like that. So similarly, Krishna also appointing various living entities to manage this universal affair. And they are all empowered expansions of Krishna. And in Brahma Samhita also mentions how different personalities who are all empowered by the Krishna, like the sun god. So he serves Krishna 24/7. He is empowered by Krishna, like Yagnaya Brahmati Sambrata Kala Chakra Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami, like that. So they are all empowered by the Supreme Lord Krishna. So and Prabhupada mentions in the purport that so the demigods, they are empowered by Krishna. So that's why one should not keep Krishna and the demigods in the same level. So if one does like that, it is an offensive. And also Prabhupada mentions that Krishna says that in Bhagavad Gita, people who worship the demigods, they are less intelligence, Alpamedasha. They're thinking that Krishna and the Supreme Lord Krishna and the demigods are in the same level. So they worship like that, then they are less intelligent, Alpamedasha. Because whatever the awards that they are getting from the demigods, they are coming from Krishna only, because they are empowered expansions of Lord Vishnu. So they are getting those awards indirectly from Krishna. So it's called Avidhi Purvakam. So that's why the scriptures recommends that one should do Vidhi Purvakam. So the worship, direct worship. So which means that worshipping the Krishna, the Supreme Lord, So also when we worship Krishna, when we please Krishna, all the demigods are pleased. So that's why if we can do this vidipurvakam, worshipping of the Krishna directly and please Krishna, in that way all the other demigods are also pleased. So then we'll be able to please everyone. So I'll pause it here. Thank you all for giving this opportunity. Granara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
Thank you.